Back in the colonial days, wealthy homeowners had these wide oak wood floors they took great pride in. And they would have about once a week the servants come in and they would mop them or wipe them down so they would shine. And this just involved like a wet mopping along the wood and then come back behind it with a dry mop, and it would make the floors bring back the luster, the shine of being tracked up all week. And they took great pride in this. And occasionally a servant would get in a hurry and they would get it wrong, and they would go across the grain as opposed to going with the grain, which left streaks, as you can imagine. Anybody knows anything about the floors, which left streaks, which made them not quite so attractive. And as you can imagine, the lady of the house was not real happy about this. And that's where the term rubbing you the wrong way came from. Has anybody ever rubbed you the wrong way? Going against your grain? No? Yeah? Have you ever rubbed anybody the wrong way? How many of you are professionals at rubbing people the wrong way? This sermon's for you. Today we're not going to talk about people rubbing people the wrong way. We're going to be talking about rubbing people the right way. Anybody want to do that? Yes. Anybody interested in that? I hope so. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about a surefire way to rub people the right way. They get on their good side. Works every time. It's a word called encouragement. Does anybody in here need encouragement? You can tell the truth in here. It's okay. Because I don't see everybody saying it. And we all need, I think we all have that in that thing inside us that says, I need to be encouraged at some point or another in our life. Sometimes it's through struggle, sometimes it's just everyday life, sometimes it's just life beats you down, right? And you just need something to pick you up, right? You need someone to come along and say a kind word or give you a compliment or give you a hug or say, pat on the back, say, it's going to be all right. It's going to be okay. To give you hope for tomorrow maybe. That's encouraging. Does that have anything to do with church? Sure it does. There's probably no greater place other than home that encouragement is needed than in church. We're a support group for each other. We're here to support each other during good times and bad times. And there will be both, right? Some of you have experienced good times, right? And some of you, I'd say probably all of you, have experienced down times. And it's those down times, more even so than good times, that we need to know that our friends and our family are there to support us. The human spine, we were talking about the back club a while ago, the human spine is a funny thing. It's surrounded by muscles and ligaments and tendons and soft tissue. And because of that, the human back can be used as a lever and enables the body to pick up large amounts of weight. But if you take away those muscles and those tendons and ligaments and soft tissue, those things that support the spine, did you know the human spine can't even hold 5 pounds? Do you see the importance of that support group? Do you see the importance of having somebody in your life that says, hey, you're all right. You look nice today. When was the last time that you had somebody say, hey, you look nice today. Nice hairdo. Like the way that suit fits you. You're looking good. Good haircut. Or not. But, But when was the last time somebody paid you a compliment? It's kind of gotten hard to give and get compliments anymore. You don't often hear them, do you? Sometimes it's hard, like in workplaces, because you don't want anybody to think you're coming on to them or whatever. You want to say, man, you look nice today. What? Then you'll be down at the HR office. He was sexually harassing me. He told me I look good today. It's become hard to give compliments. You almost have to be careful what you say, right? It's also hard to receive compliments, right? How many of you have problems receiving a compliment? Seriously. I mean, is it a struggle for you for somebody to say something positive to you? You struggle with that? I often struggle with that for most of my life. I said, what do you do with that? And I don't know if it's just I don't think I'm worth that, or I don't know what that is, but what do you do with the compliment? And years ago I said, well, I just say thank you, and move on. I mean, that's what somebody wise told me. And just a few weeks ago I discovered the perfect response to that, to getting a compliment. And the perfect response, and you can borrow this if you want to. If it makes you it makes it easier for you. When somebody comes up and says something nice to you, like, that's a nice looking suit. I know, right? That's a nice haircut. I know, right? You have a great smile. I know, right? What a fantastic sermon. I know, right? I mean, you can use that anywhere, at any time, for any compliment. So if you want to borrow that, you can. But it's hard, and we don't get a lot of compliments, do we? It's hard to give and take. We kind of get uneasy about it, right? It's not a comfortable place to be. But there is such a great need in our society for compliments. There is such a great need for that lifting up. The Bible tells us, encourage one another and build each other up. It doesn't say anything about go and see what disrespectful words you can say to somebody and tear up their life as best you can. I looked, I didn't find that. That's not in there. We need to be encouragers. We need to be those people who build each other up. It was always my philosophy in raising my children to build them up. To constantly point out their good points, to let them know that they were loved, that they had a great potential to do things. And my philosophy was build them up because the world will tear them down. Right? Amen. We need to have that philosophy about each other. We need to build each other up because we know when we go out there, there will be plenty of people who will tell us just how terrible we are. Right? You know those people? Do you? You know those people who love to tell you how bad you are or how you messed up? You know those people? Do you have those people in your life? Have you ever lived with one of those people? Are you one of those people? You see, it comes in all forms. We can not only be the recipient of that beat down, sometimes we're the giver of that beat down. And we need to be encouragers. Today we're going to talk about Barnabas. Now, if I had said we're going to talk about Joseph, you might say, Joseph, coat of many colors? What? Joseph, Mary's husband? Yeah. Barnabas. So Barnabas, some of you may know, Barnabas had a big role, a bigger role than most people realize in the New Testament. And if you don't know that, you need to go ahead and finish out the book of Acts so you can see some of the things that he's done. But Barnabas' real name was Joseph. But the apostles called him Barnabas. Maybe that was a nickname. I don't know. Do you have a nickname? You don't need to share that with me. I don't need to know what your nickname is. Some of us have nicknames we like. And some of us have nicknames we don't like. Some of us are called things we'd rather nobody ever say. Right? But they call him Barnabas, which means son of encouragement. They must have thought a lot of Barnabas, don't you think? I would picture him as being everybody's friend. Right? Somebody who's always walking around with a smile on his face. Nice suit, like the way that looks on you. You know. Those glasses really compliment your face. You know, he was that guy. Oh, you're doing a great job. He wasn't that guy who said, nice suit, but you could have polished your shoes. And he's not that guy. He's the guy who's always going around picking people up. And he put his money where his mouth was. It says here in the last verse we read that he had property and he sold it and he gave it to the apostles. You see, there was a great need. There was many people becoming believers during that time. A great influx of new believers. And some of them were poor, some of them were widows. And they were being taken care of. And some of them were coming from strange lands. And they heard of this Christ, this Lord, and they were converted, but they wanted to stick around and learn more about Him. Right? Some of them lost their jobs because of their conversion. And there was a need for money. But people were taking their land and they were selling it. And that's what Barnabas did. Because an encourager sees a need and says, what can I do to fill that need? He saw a need for money. He went and sold a piece of land and gave it to the apostles. And you're sitting there saying, preacher, I don't care how well you preach. I'm not selling my land and giving it to the church. And I said, that's okay. That's not what I'm preaching about. Because it's not about money. There are a lot of ways to meet someone's needs. There are a lot of ways to encourage people. Someone who's sick doesn't need your money as much as they need to know you care. They need your prayer. Now, they may need some money, but in reality, there's things you can do for them if you don't have money. You can reach out and let them know, if you need something, I'm here for you. If you need to talk, you know my number. Call me, please. If you need me to take the kids for a while, I'll be over. I'll take them. Whatever you need, I'm here for. That's encouraging somebody. Right? When somebody's lonely, they don't need your money. They need your time. They need you to come and sit with them, talk with them, give them a call, write them a letter, send them a note, something that says, you know, you're not really alone. I just want to let you know I'm your friend and I'm here with you. And I can see you're going through a tough time right now, but it's going to get better. People who are depressed need hope. You know? They need somebody to show up and say, hey, you know it's going to be okay. Tomorrow's a new day. The sun will come up. This isn't the end of the road, it's a bend in the road, and you're going to be okay. That's encouragement. That's encouragement without any money. It just takes a little bit of you. You see, being an encourager means that you're not a selfish person. That you're a selfless person. You're somebody who looks for ways to meet other people's needs. To meet them where they're at and to lift them up. And to give them the encouragement they need. And it comes in a lot of different shapes and a lot of different forms. And each of you have your own little talent that you bring to the table. You know, some of you can knit, some of you can bake, some of you are just good listeners. But everybody has something they can bring to the table. Right? If none of us were ever there to lift each other up, think of the place you would be. Thank God in my life there have been people who lifted me up when I was down. Don't forget those people. Acknowledge those people. You know, because there's so few. Because there's so few out there, you know. And it's hard to get somebody to encourage you, to lift you up, and to give you a compliment. So rare that you get that. You know, Mark Twain said he could live 2 months off one compliment. Sometimes I feel like I can stretch that out for a year. So, but it re-energizes you, don't it? You know, a few weeks ago, Dean Smith passed away. Now, most of you have heard of Dean Smith. I would take it. If you follow basketball, college basketball at all. And whether you like Carolina, you don't like Carolina, nothing to do with that. But Dean Smith was probably one of the greatest coaches in any sport of all time. When he retired, he had, at the time, had the most college wins of anybody. But his players pointed to something else. They said he was a better person than he was a coach. That's quite a compliment, isn't it? When he came to Carolina, he instituted something that as a kid I thought was great. Because I grew up on Carolina basketball and I watched that. But his thing was this. His rule was this. You found this out when you came as a sophomore back then. They didn't play freshman. When you came to Carolina basketball, if someone throws you the ball and you score, then you must acknowledge that person with a nod, with a point. And if you ever watched their games, you would always see players that would score and they would go. And they would point to the person who passed the ball. And I thought that was the greatest thing. And growing up, I wanted to play for Carolina. That would be my dream, to play for Dean Smith. So I practiced my point. I knew I was going to be scoring. And there's a lesson to be learned there. We need to acknowledge those people who lift us up. Those people that make our lives successful. Husbands, acknowledge your wives. Wives, acknowledge your husbands and what they mean to you and how they lift you up. I can tell you, she's not out here, but I couldn't do this without Pam. It's the bottom line. Don't tell her I said so. But she knows it. But I truly couldn't do it. There are a lot of people who have lifted me up. My parents have lifted me up when I was down. My friends have pulled me up when I was down. Said, it's going to be okay. It's going to be a better day. Don't worry about it. Don't let that get you down. And we all need those people. And we need to acknowledge that they have made a difference in our lives. And we need to give them the point. I can point. Actually, I can do this right here. Because you being here every week encourages me. Encourages me to want to come back and do this again. And each of you contribute something different to this family. Just like any family. You have moms and brothers and sisters and the crazy uncles and the unusual cousins, but your family, right? So you all fit together. You see, that's what churches should be like. Churches should be a place of encouragement. Not a place where you go and someone talks behind someone's back or someone stabs somebody in the back. Some of the worst hurt comes from church. You know that? Because it's not where you expect it. This should be a place of not putting up walls, but tearing them down. Of not tearing people down, but encouraging them. Tell them how great they are. Tell them what a difference it makes in your life to have them here every Sunday. Tell them what a difference it makes to hear their voice sing, or the chicken and pastry brought every third Sunday, whatever it is that you appreciate about them. Tell them. Take a moment and tell them. Now, right this second. Take a moment and tell them when you see them. Right? How much you love them. They're your family. But then take it out in the world. And appreciate people for who they are and where you meet them. Because you don't know the battles they're going through. Don't sit in judgment of people. Love people. You need to love people. And you need to encourage people. And some people are fighting some demons that you don't even know about and can't even imagine. And if you knew about them, you wouldn't want to sit in their shoes for 5 minutes. But all too often we judge them instead of loving them. We can't do that, folks. We can't be those people. We need to be like Barnabas, an encouragement. And his encouragement, if you read through the book of Acts, you'll find that it wasn't just about selling that piece of land and giving it to the church. It was Barnabas who brought Paul into the group. Saul had met Jesus on the road to Damascus and be converted, but the disciples weren't having anything to do with him. They were afraid of him. He had persecuted the church. He was on that most feared list of men for Christians. So even though he had converted, and even though he was preaching in Damascus, they didn't want anything to do with him. But it was Barnabas who talked him into bringing him in and sending him to Antioch. He didn't dwell on the past. He didn't look at the man's past. He said, I believe in the man's potential. I believe that Jesus Christ can come into a man's life and he can change his life and use him for good. I believe that too. You believe that? I believe that. He was an encourager who looked at people's potential. They had a similar situation with John Mark, who ended up being the author of the book of Mark, who was on a missionary trip and somehow got discouraged. He left and he didn't want to go back, and they had another trip they wanted to go on, and Paul didn't want him. Paul said, no. He left last time. It's kind of strange how Paul didn't want him back after they had kind of discarded Paul. But Paul said, no, he didn't want him back. But it was Barnabas again who took him under his wing and believed in his future. Aren't you glad he did? How many people come into our lives that we need to believe in their future? Children, we need to believe in children's future. You know, Jacob's getting baptized today. Isn't that great? That's just so special. But we need to believe in his future. We, his church family, need to be encouragers of that young man. And of all our children. He's going to have struggles in his life. There is no doubt about it. And when he does, we need to be there to pick him up. Right? You agree with that? A kind word makes all the difference in the world. It can change people's lives. A few years back, there was a film, and I don't know if you saw it, Stand By Me, I think was the name of it, with, there's a true story of a teacher by the name of Jamie Escalante, and he was a teacher up north, and it was a rough school. It was a really rough school. And most of the students were kind of disruptive, and how he turned that around. But he had two teachers. He tells the story. He had two students, in there, both by the name of Johnny. And one Johnny was a great student. He loved school. He was one of the few kids that did, and he studied, and he made good grades, and he was just a delight to have in class. And the other Johnny, well, if you flip that, he was that. He was that rebellious kid. The kid that didn't have any interest in school. That kid that was disruptive in the class. That kid that just didn't seem to get it right. You know those kids? You've seen those kids? He was that kid. Well, the first PTA meeting and the parent meeting, a lady came up to Jamie and said, "Hi, I'm Johnny's mother. How's he doing?" He said, "Oh, your son is such a delight. He is my favorite student. I love having him in my class. He just embraces knowledge like nobody else. I just thank you. He is just such a blessing." And she left. Well, the next day, when class was starting, Johnny, rebellious Johnny, came up to Mr. Escalante and said, "I just want to thank you for what you said to my mom." He said, "No one's ever really believed in me before. No one's ever said they like me. Most of my teachers hate me. And I want you to know I'm going to work to be a better student." And he did. And he became a good student. But what he didn't know was Mr. Escalante thought he was talking to the other Johnny's mother. But those kind words, even though they weren't intended, made their way back to him, and it made a difference in his life. Don't ever underestimate the power of words and what they can do for a person. That lifting them up, that giving of a compliment, that giving of encouragement. It's what changes lives, folks. Just as Barnabas changed lives through his encouragement. I'm going to end by telling you one last story about a man, well, Started off as a boy, I guess. And his dad died when he was about 5. And by the 6th grade, he had dropped out of school. And by the time he was 17, he had been fired from several jobs. By the time he was 18, he was married. And 19, he had a baby. By the time he was 20, his wife and he had separated. He went on to try several jobs. He tried to be a conductor, got fired. And he tried to join the army, and he washed out. He applied to law school and got rejected. And finally, he came to work in a small 2-bit restaurant as a dishwasher. And a little bit later on, they even let him cook a little bit. And the only thing that went right in his life was he was able to persuade his wife to come back. And she joined him at work in this restaurant. They worked there for years. And finally, at 65, he retired. And at the first of the month, he went out and got that check from the Social Security. And it was a whopping $105. He was a little discouraged. As a matter of fact, he planned on killing himself. And he went out to a tree and sat underneath that tree and wrote his last will and testament. And his wife got wind or figured out what he was doing. And she went out there and told him he was going to do no such thing. That he had no reason to be in despair. And that she didn't know much, but she knew one thing. That he could do better than anybody else that she knew. And he asked what it was, and she said, "You can cook." She said, "You can cook better than anybody I know." Well, that planted a seed. So the next day he got up and he went to the bank and he borrowed $87 against his Social Security check. And with that $87, he went to the grocery store and he bought some boxes. And he bought some chicken. And along with that special recipe he had, he cooked some chicken. And he went around to house and sold his boxes of chicken in Corbin, Kentucky. Well, it got pretty popular. So he decided he'd try to put it in the restaurants. He got rejected 1,014 times. That's a lot of rejection. I'm just saying. And finally, a man by the name of John Brown said, "Yeah, I'll put it in my restaurant. I'll go into business with you." That man is Colonel Sanders, Kentucky Fried Chicken. That's a true story. It's amazing, isn't it? A man, what was the difference? What made the difference? It was the same man. It was the same recipe. Same chicken. Same circumstances, but what made the difference? Encouragement. His wife believed in him. His wife gave him the encouragement to turn it around. And every time you go and get a bucket of KFC, you can thank his wife for that. We might not ever have known about the Colonel and his secret recipe had it not been for his wife and her words of encouragement. How many people are in your life that need encouragement? How many people do you encounter every day that need a kind word, a hug, a pat on the back? Be careful who you hug if it's not invited. Okay? But need a hug or a pat on the back, or a, "It's okay," or "You'll get them next time," or "All is not lost," or "We can do this," or "I'll help you," or "I'll pray for you." How many people do you encounter each day that need encouragement? Let's be people of encouragement. Can we do it? Sure we can. I encourage you to be people of encouragement. to go out and meet people where they're at and encourage them, whether it's your children, whether it's your spouse, or your parent, or a church member, or outside these doors, the grocery store clerk, or anybody you meet. When you approach a door, man, let's do this. Let's do this. I've been doing this for a while. I just get a tickle out of it. It tickles me. Open the door. When you go to the supermarket, look for somebody to open the door for them, to let them out. Hold the door for them and look at their faces. Like, you're not going to slam that on me, are you? I mean, they look at you holding that for me? What's the catch? You're not picking my pocket as I pass through, are you? Because that's the kind of world we live in, right? But it's fun. It's fun. I open the door everywhere I go. I love it. It's become second nature to me now. But little things like that, right? It doesn't take much to be a person of encouragement. Can we all be people of encouragement? Wasn't it Christ who encourages us? Who gives us hope for tomorrow, right? Who lets us know it's going to be okay? That God hasn't left us, nor will He leave us. Right? It's going to be okay. There's going to be sunshine. There's going to be light at the end of the tunnel. It's not going to be a train. Right? Can we be those people? I know we can. I know a lot of you are. But I pray that we will supersize it. That we will go out there and impress the world. Because it's not about so much, and I say that impress the world because they're not expecting it. I say it because of this. What you will find is when you go out there and encourage other people and bless them, that you will find that the person who has truly been blessed is you. And all God's people said.